And then when I go back to the footage, there was two kids that actually just turned my camera around and filmed themselves dancing and doing a whole bunch of stuff, and then it fell. All right, welcome back to the latest episode of Game Day Glare. I'm Lance. I'm with my boy E. This is the podcast for sports videographers. So E, how you doing, buddy?
Good, yourself?
Yeah.
Usually when I talk to you, I haven't seen you in a while, but this time actually seen plenty of you recently.
Yeah. E and I worked together 3 times last week. We had 2 hockey games for the Canadians and 1 PWHL game. So how was your experience at the Centre Bell? How was it being back there? Because we used to work there full time together. 10 years ago? You've done a couple little gigs since, but kind of 3 games in 6 days. What was that like being back in that environment?
Well, it's good because now I'm starting to sort of find my feet again. Like I know where the elevators are. I know, I'm trying to, when you're running through the crowd in between periods and there's people everywhere, like I know where the nearest exit is and things like that. So I'm getting back into that groove of making the shortest way out of here and easiest way to where I'm trying to get. But and it's cool to see people that I haven't seen in a while. But it was fun. There was also a big, I don't know if you saw the PWHL game where, I don't know if a pipe exploded or something, but there's a flood going on at some point. So there's always a new thing.
Yeah, it happened like a couple days before, and it was like the dripping off of it. That's what I was told. But I did see a couple buckets and a couple water areas near the press conference room.
Yes, it was. Yeah, that side of it was interesting because the water was coming through like, lights and stuff. So it could have been an electrical disaster. But in the that food court area where people eat, there was like a lake. That was bad. It was an easy spot to clean because they've got all the equipment and the service technique was all over it, so it wasn't too bad. But I've been there so much that I'm gonna get my own pass and everything. So it was in the process of getting made the last time I was there. So next time I should have it, so I won't have to follow you around to go through doors I don't have access to, or ask security to open like 4 doors in a row for me. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, because E would tag along with me. I'd bring him to his camera. We'd test his camera, then go test my camera, or vice versa on certain days. It's definitely nice to have you back in the building and getting to hang out together. Some of our other cameramen were teasing us a bit, asking us if we were there to do a podcast when we were sitting around waiting for the game. But it's always nice to work with friends and that people you work with a long time at these events. So I'm glad to be working with you again sometimes. So now, you were in Australia.
What are you talking about?
You weren't doing well. First, I'll just talk about working with you. You were doing a lot of basketball, a lot of other sports, and now you've been doing hockey. How do you find doing hockey? Because they had you on a couple of cameras, like you were doing some fan cameras, doing some slash camera, which is like getting people coming in the zone. PWHL, you were running around for the league with your FX3. So how was that?
Yeah, no, well, it's always fun to have a bit of variety in what you do. I find like doing the same camera all the time. Well, that's like, you tell me how you feel about it, because that's pretty much you're on the same camera most times. So, but for me, I think there's pros and cons in both. I think doing the same camera means exactly what you have to do. There's no stress. There's no surprises in a way. So that's fun. But doing new things and learning new things is fun as well. So there was a bit of that. Like the first game, I think, was with the MCs and doing a lot of like live little segments with them, which was fine. But it's always a bit tricky as well for me because I'm taller than most people. So, for example, my first, not the first, the second one, like they were interviewing kids. So I basically have to be on my knees. So to just get the shot to get the kids, but also to get the adult in the shot as well. So I have to do like a, look up, low angle sort of shot. And it's shoulder rig, so I'm on the floor trying to, so which is fine for a little bit, but when it drags on, it can get a bit messy. But so yeah, all these things make it a bit different and funny and stuff. And the big camera was definitely a like, it wasn't my first time, but I hadn't done it in a very long time. Last time I've done it was probably in Australia when I did hockey as well, actually. But yeah, sort of getting used to working with the zoom
Hard
on one
body.
hand and the like figuring out, because it's not about like I know what the camera does. I know what I did, because that's what I was telling my friends actually the other day. I was like, yeah, it's not that hard in the sense that there's like five. You're not doing that much because there's a CCU guy who's worried about brightness and colors and things like that. So there's about 5 or 6 things that you as the cameraman have to do. So my only concern when I first get there, and which you help me with, is figuring out where those 5, 6 things are. So where's the zoom? Where's the focus? Where's the return? Where's my mic? Where's, like, as soon as I know where these things are, I'm good to go. But it's if I'm not sure where something is and no one's there to tell me, that's where it gets a bit stressful. So as long as I get someone like you who kind of answers my list of questions, and I can figure out where everything is, then I'm good to go. And yeah, no, it was fun following players around and stuff. Like, I hadn't done that in a while, so
And you
it
got to
was
do a
good to.
UFC interview also, just by chance. We had two UFC champs when you were there, and that was your camera for the interview. So it's kind of
Yes.
a nice mix of things, you know. It's full
Yeah, true.
circle because you used to do a lot of UFC videos, and now you're doing hockey, and the UFC is coming to you because the UFC is
Exactly.
coming back to Montreal. So it's kind of
UFC
very cool.
315.
Yeah.
Belal versus some Australian dude, actually. So it's really full circle.
Even me, the last couple games I've been kind of all over too. So at Four Nations Face Off, I was doing a lot of player interviews. So in between periods before the game arrivals, I would do player interviews, which is not my usual spot. And then usually for Habs games, I'm right behind the net. But PWHL, I was over a bit in the Zamboni tunnel, so it was kind of nice to change it up, kind of see some different angles of hockey. I do prefer my behind the net the best, only because I'm a creature of habit. I'm used to the routine. I like the routine. I like the same stuff. I know what's expected of me and stuff like that. But the reason why I brought this up is to tie it in today's show. So today's show, we want to talk about like why angles matter and different camera angles. Because while you're filming sports, there are some standard angles in that, but it's how do you get those angles that really make your video pop or push your limits a bit and make you a little bit more creative. Because on every shoot, I suggest you try and come up with a camera angle that you haven't tried before or makes you a little bit uncomfortable. And it doesn't mean you're going to use that angle in your edit. It doesn't mean that angle is going to work. But you'll only know these things once you try them. So that's what today's topic is about. We're going to be talking about traditional angles versus more immersive shots, stuff like that. So
Yeah, you brought that topic up yesterday, and that was yeah, I thought it was a great idea. It's very interesting. I've been talking a lot lately, actually, as you know, about intentionality and composition and trying to make my shots more interesting. As I felt like more recently, like I got a bit lazy with my filming, and I would just I would move around but get the same shots every time, the same. Yeah, so trying to be more thoughtful and think of these things, and because ultimately it makes your videos more cinematic, they look better, and that makes a much bigger difference than just a better camera, in
yeah,
my opinion, anyway.
honestly, your perspective is everything, right? Like, so let's dive into what's the difference. What's a traditional angle and what's more of a creative angle you would try in, say, basketball?
Well, like, just because the basic thing would be to, well, the very, very basic thing, let's say you're like a parent who's just filming their kid's game, you're gonna you're automatically, or what most people do is just they sit in front of the stands, probably around the middle of the court, and they just film the action, from left to right. So what you end up getting is the back of the players on each side, like the back of the players on offense. Like, so you're not really getting a great angle of the actual action. But most people do that because they want to cover both sides of the court, so they sit in the middle. Um, Once you get a bit more into like sports videography and you actually want to do some cool edits and reels and things, then people tend to move towards the baseline, which makes total sense because at least that way you get players coming towards you. When they're driving the basket, you get some nice shots, things like that. But again, a lot of people will just sort of sit down and stay at the same spot the entire time. So, which is good. Sitting down is a good thing because you get sort of a low angle shot, which is obviously something we always recommend for sports. But yeah, you definitely want to, if you're going to do a video, that have a lot of clips in it, like you want to move around, you want to get different perspectives. So yeah, we can push into the different ideas, but in terms of like what the typical thing that we see is, yes, people either sitting at the middle of the court or sitting at the baseline and not moving much, and more to the point, like just having that same camera angle the entire game.
You wanna make it look like you have more than one camera at that game. So that's the idea of moving around and getting those angles. Now, you also are gonna have action shots, game shots, the standard ones, like, say if you're at basketball, you're on the baseline, or hockey, say if you're against the glass, and, you have some challenges with baseline and against the glass as referees. Referees, like, like your shirt says, "Move ref, I'm filming." That is a major challenge. So what you got to do is change the angle, get up higher in the stands. Sometimes, say first quarter or first 5 minutes. Like I've done it before, where I'll look at my watch. And I'm like, okay, or the clock, and I'm like, okay, say the quarter's 12 minutes. Well, the first 6 minutes I'm down low. The next 6 minutes I'm up high to kind of give me a different angle and to avoid those obstacles that can block me.
No, definitely. I've done it at some basketball games where, like you said, like being on the baseline, you get some great shots, but half of them will be ruined by the referee. So sometimes when you've been filming like 5 or 6 different plays that would have looked great but were ruined because the referee just went straight in front of you every single time, and you're like, sure, I could move to the other side, but it's the same as like being stuck in traffic in on the multi-lane sort of highway or whatever. Like as soon as you change lane, whoop, that's where it stops. And it's the same thing. If I move there, the ref's gonna go on that side next play. So anyway, all that to say that being on the baseline sometimes can be frustrating. So I do obviously do it for a while, but I don't want to be all game sitting there. Even at a professional game, I'll be there for a little bit, and then eventually I'll move around. I'll test the boundaries of what I'm allowed to do by, like, there's like a table usually on the side where like the scorekeepers and all these stats people and staff are sort of sitting. I'll go at that table because usually that's where if there's a space available, you can put your computer there and maybe do like a quick edit. So I'll go there, and while I'm there, I'll start filming a little bit just to get that side shot, which is usually like if I'm at the end of the table, I'm sort of, well, actually, there's still, if the coach is the type of person that sort of gets up and sort of walks around, I'm at that spot where he'll get in my shot. But otherwise, I'm kind of close to the action. I get that side view. That's a cool place to be, but I can't do that too long because eventually someone will say like, "Hey, you're not supposed to be filming from here." But so I'll do it just a little bit while I look like I'm switching batteries or something. And sometimes I'll go in the crowd, like on the other side. Obviously, is where the crowd is. So behind people, like if I can get, like, I'll get the court in focus. I'll probably be in manual focus for that. Like I'll get the court in focus and some of the crowd in the foreground, and I'll try to either shoot sort of a stable shot in between two people if there's enough room, or I'll try to move if I've got a gimbal, like do things like that. Or you can go up in the stands and then get that downwards view, which is kind of cool too, because you can get the entire court, or you can zoom in and just sort of follow a player from a different perspective. You don't want to do the entire game like that, but to have a few shots like that, like usually I'll stay there until I get like 2 or 3 like good plays, like a few threes and a dunk if I'm lucky, and then I'll move on. But yeah, to have that shot, and that wide shot also is a good. Sometimes it's just like a good sort of in between shot between two baseline close-ups, like just to mix it up. So it's good to have a bit of that. So yeah, just sort of walking around, getting those different shots, and if I'm walking around and I'm seeing an angle that can be cool. Like sometimes you're walking like behind, like at professional venues, obviously there's a lot more space behind the baseline. So I've shot a few times like from way behind the basket, and you can go there's basically kind of a tunnel sort of thing because there's crowd on each side, so you can sort of see that crowd on each side, and you have a great view of the basket in front of you. So like it doesn't look that great because obviously the whole structure of the basket hides a lot of the players, but when someone's driving to the basket, it kind of looks cool. So yeah, like they're just like working on different shots like that, and having fun with it basically.
Well, because one of the biggest perceptions of a sports videographer is people just assume we're filming the actual action. There are so many other things going on in a game that you could film that you can add into your videos that can make it a little bit more exciting. So when I do move around, I'll try and get some crowd sometimes where I won't even film the action happening. Hopefully, there's a big play just so I get that crowd shot angle that I could splice in later on. Also, little pieces of the venue that every gym is a little bit different. So if there's a quick timeout, hopefully I can get some close-ups of players on the bench, players interactions, get the smiles, get those little things that you might not need in your first reel, but later on, if you're working for that team for a couple of games or whatever, you can always go back and grab those quick shots later on, and they'll definitely come in handy for a hype. Even like banners, little things like that. Try and get as much of the ambience as you can, because that will definitely come in handy for your video, and it gives it a little bit more. It gives it like a little bit more texture, a little bit more feel to it. Like you want the person who watches your video to feel like they're actually there, and by adding those little subtle shots, they really help. So it's a lot to take in especially when you're starting, right? Because you're not thinking about these things. You're thinking like, I got to get that guy's dunk, or I can't believe I missed that shot. But in the scheme of it, for a whole game, there's so many plays, you're not going to get them all. And you have to really wrap that around your head that you're going to miss stuff. But be sure that the shots that you get are good. So that's where you kind of want to start setting up shots. You want to plan some stuff because yes, I don't know, I'd say 8 out of 10 times your camera's in your hand and you're reacting to what's going on. But those shots that are really going to carry your video are the ones that you have planned, whether it's player entrance, and even for that, like players come on the court. Well, you have, say, for basketball or hockey, even you have 3 times for hockey, twice for basketball. Well, get that same shot, but get it at different angles. Get a low angle, get a high angle, and then when you edit it, it looks like it's the same time in your edit. And having those different angles are really have a lot of value because it just makes it look like there was more cameras there.
Yeah, no, exactly. I can give you like an example of that, like actually, because ultimately all these things that you mentioned, they help with your storytelling, and a lot of people like don't really understand what storytelling really is when it comes to sport, like unless they do some type of interview that they can use the audio of like underneath. They don't really know what we mean when we talk about storytelling just in a highlight type of edit. But like for example, if I'm shooting, if I'm behind the bench, okay, like I'm trying to film the game similar to what I was talking about earlier with the crowd in front, but it's the bench that's in front of me, but like I have the court in focus. And if they're actually sitting on the side where their team's on offense, and I can get a shot of someone shoot, I'm doing this, I'm keeping them in the foreground, because what I'm thinking is if I can get a shot of someone shooting a 3, for example, what's going to happen? They're all going to stand up, and then they're going to be like, as soon as that 3 goes in, they're like putting like fingers up in the air and they're all excited and stuff. So they're probably going to block my shot. I'm not going to see the ball going in. But if I get a shot of the player shooting and the teammates getting up and then getting excited, first of all, I don't even need to see the shot go in, because them getting excited, putting their 3 fingers up in the air, just I know exactly what happened. I don't really need to see it. And saying similar to like in a movie when you don't need to see the person getting killed, like they just sort of tell the story differently sometimes to make it less violent on screen. So it's like similar sort of uh tool for storytelling. You just use the reaction to tell the story without actually showing the basket going in. Or, like you said, you can cut two different shots together. So I can show a different three being made, and then use that reaction to, you know, be follow up and just show emotion after a big three. So that's yeah, you know, intentionality. That's what it is. It's like trying to set up a shot so that when something happens, it's going to create that storytelling element that you're going to be able to then utilize in your edit.
Some of our shots are highlights and game action, and some of the shots are storytelling shots. And I guess that's a good segue into the next section. So we're going to talk about like next level camera angles, thinking outside the box. So in Sportsy, off the top of your head, what's one of the most creative angles that you've ever tried to push your story or push your edit a bit?
Well, I think in game it's difficult depending on the level that you're filming, but like a first person type of perspective is always cool to have. Like if you can actually put a helmet camera or a chest sort of strap thing with a GoPro, things like that can be really cool. Like I know certain leagues, like even for broadcast, will have a camera on the referee, and they'll use it. Oh, I was gonna say maybe not live, but you know, in Australia, like in rugby, I've seen like live shots of the ref camera, and even sometimes like you can hear the audio, so it's a bit. I find them very very courageous to use this audio in real time because you never know what's going to be said. But yeah, like a ref camera is cool. Things like that. So like in and like obviously like if we're talking, you know, in the game sort of setup, then yeah, you're limited to what you can do. But like you might be able to put like cameras in goals and on backboards and things like that. But if you want to go outside of the game stuff, and sometimes it's like using pre-game to set up. I don't want to burn like our next topics of it
No,
stuff,
no,
but like
no.
there's things that you can do in pre-game because you're allowed to go on the field, on the court and stuff, maybe a bit more, and so you can utilize this to create those first person shots. Like, you know, just for basketball, for example, you could just pick up a basketball and dribble and film your hands sort of doing this, and then quickly sort of use that as a, you know, cutaway shot between two shots, and it kind of looks like first person type of thing, and then it cuts to the guy dunking, or like, you know, there's different things that you can do. Yeah, do you have any?
Yeah, there's a couple that I do try. Actually, honestly, the helmet cam is a really easy thing to do. Like you can clamp, you know, especially in hockey, say you take a helmet with a cage, you put a GoPro inside it. There even people have clamps. They'll use a small rig clamp. They'll put like a A7 S3 or an FX3 in the camera. But what they'll do is they'll just actually hold the cage. They'll put the cage and clamp the cage to the camera. So it looks, you don't need the rest of the helmet. You just need the grill to make it look like that.
Yeah,
So that's something that works really, really well. You actually see it a lot on Instagram, right? Especially in football, like high school football, like that's a go-to shot. And it's really not that complicated to do. Because even if you just use a GoPro instead of your A7S3 or FX3, it's just a quick reaction shot. It's like, oh wow, this is a different angle. Now there's some people who do a full video with it, but I would just use it sporadically. But it's definitely a cool thing. One thing that I do a lot in hockey is I have this puck and I have a GoPro mount on it. And I've used it for numerous videos of stick handling, fake shots on the goalie. I've even just left it in the net sometimes during a practice to kind of get some different shots. Now, I've already gone over this on the show, but GoPro has a pretty good warranty. So if you do break it, you're not so upset. But that little GoPro on a puck is a cool shot. And it doesn't always work, okay? Like I have some guys who are stick handling, it's just spinning around and you don't get anything. But that's the whole point of it, is to take the risk and try and get shots that you can't get. I've also climbed up a ladder and put a GoPro on top of a net, a basketball net, to do tests for myself. And I actually got a really cool profile picture on Facebook years ago where I'm actually dunking. It's only 9-foot net though, by the way, but it looks like a 10-foot net. But the shot's really, really cool. And the idea is to get those angles that you cannot get handheld And you can, you put a camera up in the rafters. Sometimes you can do a time lapse. Like I've used time lapse in a lot of sports videos as a quick little cutaway, and it's something that just catches people attention enough. They're like, "Oh, what was that? Oh, that's different," because we're so used to seeing the same shots over and over again. And that's the idea with these small little cameras. And you mentioned ref cams, and it's funny because on broadcasts now in hockey for the Four Nations face-off, they were using it for the opening puck drop. And on live TV, you don't usually see it as often here in North America. You would see it more in like the HBO series that leads up talking about the Four Nations Cup face off, sorry, stuff like that. Where now we're starting to see that, okay, there is a need for these special angles, like the NFL. The NFL on their goalposts, their cameras, like those are 4K cameras now that are in the little pylons at the end zone. But the
Yeah,
shots are amazing. When guys are diving and getting that, that's great. Where before they would use that footage later on. So people are opening up their minds and trying new things. And it's up to you to always try to figure out ways. Like I did this corporate video where this girl was like an artist, and I did all these nice stuff of her drawing her stuff and that. And I said, "Hey, can we take 2 minutes?" And I put a camera basically on her pen, and I had it attached with the rig, and I just had her drawing that. But when I used that for quick cuts in between, it really, really brought the story together. So the idea with these, helmet cams or puck cam or even a ball cam, the idea is just to give different perspective and to kind of spice up your video and get away from the same old typical angle.
yeah. No, totally. I agree. And like when you touched on real quick at the start of your answer, where he's talking about like using a part of a helmet. I remember filming at a football game, like a university football game here in Montreal, and basically what the videographer for the team was doing, like during pregame, instead of just doing the again like thousands of random shots of people just practicing going through the motions, he used like the face mask of a football helmet and attached it, like you said, with clamps and stuff. So he was putting his camera was on the gimbal in the vertical position, and the face mask was in front of it. So since the camera was vertical, it wasn't too wide. So it really looked like you were, the eyes going through the mask. So he was just basically moving around as if he's a player on the field during pre-game. So he would go, towards the players. They would high five him or whatever. He would go inside a huddle. He would, so that looked way cooler than just filming guys warming up.
Yeah. Even I've tried like car rigs where I put my Sony camera on the front of my car. It was scary as hell. To test the suction cup. But like, you can have different creative shots of a player pulling up to a venue if you have the access, right? Where you can put an action cam with a suction cup and have him just drive in the parking lot real fast or getting out of the car. There's so many little creative angles that you can do. And especially if you do like motorsports, right? Then all these little clamps and all these little suction cups and stuff, they really come in handy. They can really give you that perspective, like you're on the dirt bike or you're in that race car, where in other sports you don't really have that. Like, if we're filming high school basketball, you can maybe get a kid to wear the body cam for practice and that, but in a game, it's going to be really, really hard to do that, but maybe you can get like a mascot or assistant coach or somebody and get an angle from there and make it feel like you're part of the team. That's something that they would be open to.
Yeah. I think those arrival shots, by the way, should be somebody should brainstorm about these and try to make it different, because it's always the same thing. It's a player like super well dressed walking with a horrible background behind them. Just looks like, the backstage area of any arena looks like shit. Like it's not pretty. So it's always like, yeah, super well dressed person walking in slow motion in a place that looks like, I don't know, the boiler room of some high school gym or whatever. So yeah, they should rethink that concept and try to make it a bit cooler. I think maybe they should just film the arrival to the actual locker room, or just
Exactly.
filming from a different perspective. I don't know.
Not from the
Anyway,
car
that was just
garage. No, you don't want the,
yeah,
the,
yeah.
the car garage in the background.
But you know what I
Actually,
mean? Like it always looks, the background is always horrible. Like it's
Mhm.
not a cool setting. Like it's, I don't know.
In your last couple of shoots, has there been any angles that you've tried to kind of, push yourself or get yourself out of the creative box and try something a little different?
You know, I mentioned a few things regarding basketball. I'm looking forward to football season because I'm looking forward to working a bit more with, well, depending on, you know, where and when I'm filming. Like, because I was gonna say, um, be more conscious of like where the sun is and film according to that in a way that's gonna look better. So, but obviously, if I'm filming a night game, it's a different story. If I'm filming, but even then, like I think even that, just filming, like filming football, for example, I have a tendency, I have a 70 to 200. If I can follow, like instinctively, you want to follow the action, get that cool close up shot of the guy running with the ball and stuff. But really, sometimes a wider shot that is from a low angle and you can see all the lights and the crowd in the background. Um, it kind of looks cooler and
Yeah,
it's
it does.
actually easier to get because it's wider, so you're more stable. You're not the player's not coming out of frame. You can see other players as well when they come in. You know, it's a lot easier to be stable, all these things. So and if it's shot properly from the right angle, the right side, like, and it looks amazing. So again, it's all about variety, but yeah. So I'd like to. I'm looking forward to football, to just film in those big stadiums and get some cool sort of cinematic shot where the background tells a story just as much as the foreground, and also play with the sun and yeah, just where the light hits and things like that. That's what I'm looking forward to most. I'd say in my upcoming shoots, but it's still pretty cold here. Football's not getting played anytime soon.
No, no. But you're capturing the atmosphere. That's what's cool about a shot like that. So even, when I film hockey, for, like, Hockey Canada, like, big events, what I try to do is sometimes I'll leave cameras that aren't filming any action at all. I'll clip, cameras to the glass, say top down of the bench, so you get a reaction of a goal, or side of the bench where I'm just looking at players' faces watching the plays, because you will get a goal and you're going to get them to jump up, and that's an emotional shot. And crowd shots, I'll leave cameras in the crowd. I'll time lapse crowd. I'll do low angles of crowd so I get them jumping and stuff like that. And when you have those shots, I mean, in a game, I could let my camera roll for 40 minutes and maybe get two of those shots, because your team doesn't score all the time. But once you have those shots, they're money, and you will use them in different edits. You will use them in, edits that you're trying to get emotion, because those are storytelling shots. Just like your football shot with the scenery, that's a storytelling moment. It's not so much about the guy's touchdown or the guy's throw. It's about how the scene looks, how all the colors are, how the fans are reacting, and the environment you're in. And that's what's tricky, because we're always focused on the action, the action, the action. And sometimes you got to step back a bit and not worry about the action, film the atmosphere. And that's kind of like, why we kind of came up with this topic, because it's something that we struggle with too sometimes. We go to an event and we're like, okay, you want to film everything, but you realize you can't. So you need to plan out, what am I doing pre-game? What am I doing during the game? Where am I going? And what am I doing at intermissions and stuff like that too are great times. It's a downtime. If you don't have to transfer clips, you can easily get those environment shots then too.
Yeah. And to be honest, I'm starting to think about doing what photographers already do, some videographers do as well, is to just have my second, like, let's say my main camera has the 70 to 100 on it, just to have like a strap with a second camera just always on my body, ready to go, that has like a wide angle that I can just quickly put my camera on the floor, grab the other one so that I don't have to change lenses. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Actually, it's funny, but that's why I want to get a second camera, because I have my regular 2875 and have my wide on the other one. It's just easier, especially like if I do when I do corporate stuff for interviews. It's just nice to have that second, your B cam, as your wide shot, where it kind of gets more of the atmosphere. I might only use it 2-3 times in the interview, but I have
Mm.
that option.
Yeah.
So now, what kind of angles are you using for storytelling? to kind of make your video a little bit more dramatic, make it a little bit more personal, I'd say.
Well, I don't know about personal, but like for storytelling, I think it goes back to like what I was saying about those football shots. Like I think having like a wider, basically it's just using the elements around the game. So if if it's getting a wider shot, so I can get the crowd reaction and also just seeing the stadium, seeing like obviously you do that when you're in a big sort of cool looking stadium, but if you're in a gym, high school gym, that might not look as great. But yeah, just looking the using the environment to tell the story of where we are and how involved like the crowd is into what's going on, and it just makes it uh more hyped and you get more into it that way. But it's also like I was telling with basketball, like having people in the foreground, sometimes the reaction of those people tell the story. So having the bench in the foreground, having um, if I have a coach in front of me and he's sort of out of focus in the foreground and something happens and he has like a either a frustrated reaction or he's happy and he's clapping, he's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like just seeing those things in your shot, they just add so much value. And same thing with just regular fans. Like obviously, like if they're like if you can see like there's a fan that's all, he's all geared up and he's really into it. Like that having that person in the foreground of your shot is gonna get you some emotion, something that's gonna add to your shot. So trying to utilize those elements to elevate your composition and your storytelling. So that's usually that's how I go about it now that I'm more focused on my composition. But otherwise, yeah, if you're trying to do like if you're doing more like interviews and things like that, then it becomes about like depending on like the more dramatic it is, the tighter I'll be on the face, things like that.
I feel like you can inject the emotion. So there's a couple techniques you can use, like POV shots, like we talked about before with the camera, so you feel like you're there. Slow motion. Well, I can't believe we haven't even really mentioned slow motion. So E and I talk about this all the time. You shoot at a higher frame rate, but the reason why you want the slow motion shots is to make it feel dramatic. Depending on how your music goes or what the sound bite is, if you can slow down a really action packed moment, that has a big impact in your story. Also, you could do like follow cam techniques where you're following one person or uh, showing just that one person during the play. Um, and then there's also the technique that is overused, but still works in sports, speed ramping. But when you're filming this, try and think of like you said, your composition, and try and realize I'm filming the shot for the speed ramp, not just I'll look at it later and I'll just speed ramp it now. It looks good. You want maybe, say for instance, in basketball, you speed ramp a 3-pointer, you get a little lower angle, wider. You can get that bench if you're on the opposite side of the floor, and then you could speed ramp it going in the net. These are all things that can add to your storytelling, because most people don't always tell a story when they're editing sports. And when you tell a story, your edit will hit a lot harder.
No, I agree. And I think like yeah, like you said, I think like the idea is to have these shots thought through so that yeah they can help you with that entire process. So like you said, like whether you're following someone and things like that, like just think about how you ultimately you'd like to use that shot. So that way, if you have an idea while you're filming it, it's probably going to be one easier to edit it, and two, it's going to fit a lot better in your video. Because if you're just creating these random shots with no thought behind it, then it's harder to sort of put them together so that they make sense. So like for example, if you're doing a lot of if you have if you're following a player sort of running out, then maybe you think like, what would be a cool shot to come out of that would have the same type of camera movement. So if I'm going in towards the player, then maybe the next shot I'm trying to get, I don't know, like my a camera where I'm pushing in towards the face off or the tip off or whatever the beginning of the game is. So that you have like movements that you can put one after the other that do make sense. If you tend to sort of you're doing a few like sort of dolly shots from left to right, try to remember that you're doing them from left to right, so that you can always going to have that same sort of movement, and it's going to move like fluidly from one shot to the other. So just have that, yeah, that in mind when you're filming, so that in the edit it all comes together.
Yeah, exactly. Because I filmed the shot, a slow motion shot that I had this thing set up in my head for this edit for my son's playoff videos, and I want to go with this nice slow song.
Are they still in, by the way?
Yeah, yeah, still in, they're still in. And my son trashed it. He's like, "No, that's too slow. We want something fast. We want something exciting." He's like, "We're not looking for a video like that." And I was like, "Oh." So I had to read my audience. So I'm like, "Okay,
Too
I'll make
artsy
another."
fartsy for for
Yeah,
hockey.
exactly. So I'm like, I'll make that video for myself. So you have to know your client too. But
Yeah.
I did film that shot with a purpose, and I will use it later on in that. It's just it's not what they wanted at the time. I guess we should talk about gear and some tools to kind of help you get these angles. Like, don't get me wrong, any camera you have in your hands, you can get multiple angles with. It's just there are some tools for pro videographers that kind of make it a little easier. So what would be your go-to tool, E, if you're trying to get some different camera angles?
Well, obviously, if it's putting cameras in difficult sort of positions, like inside the goal or places like that, like obviously some type of action camera, and same thing if you're going to do like first person, strap the camera to the chest, things like that. But other than that, for me personally, like it's definitely a gimbal now. Like even though I was against, not that I was against them, but I didn't really see the value for sports until quite recently, like I'd say in the last couple of years. And so now, like, yeah, just even for the same shots that I would do without the gimbal. Like I'm not just saying, oh, just use a gimbal for the sake of like doing dollies and pushing everywhere. It's just like, for example, sitting on the baseline at a basketball game. If I'm shooting handheld, even if I'm sitting down, I'm off the floor by that much, and my camera movements are not super fluid. If I've got a gimbal, I can literally be on the floor. The camera can hold the gimbal upside down and film from a super low angle. That's way better than not way better, but definitely better than the others. And also I can get up quickly if something happens and I want to change my angle for whatever reason. And but being like super low like that makes a 3-point shot look quite cool, and also I can get a better view of the actual net because the lower I am, the more of the ring I see, and things like that. And it allows me, yeah, just all that to say that it allows me to go places that I wouldn't be able to go without the gimbal. Because I could potentially put my hands out on the floor like that, but I would be in a very awkward position. I'd be shaking and all these things. So, and same thing with like going up. Like, let's say there's a huddle and I want to get into the huddle by just putting my camera up. Like, I can do it. And to be honest, because it's going to be quite a wide shot, it's not going to be that hard to be stable if I've got some type of like stabilization on my camera or my lens. But having the gimbal, first of all, I can go even higher. So I can get probably much closer as well. So I can really be in there and probably see the face of the person sort of giving the speech inside the huddle, where without the gimbal, I probably wouldn't be able to. Or I can maybe squeeze it in from down low and get their faces sort of looking down and at the camera. So the gimbal to me definitely helps me, and as well, like I can film in movement. I can move around, not be worry about my shots being too shaky and stuff. So yeah, that would definitely be the tool that I think can really help you get different shots, different perspectives, and get them right as well.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? All those angles you mentioned, you know how much a little bit of movement, gimbal movement, in that makes that shot that much better. So the tool that I'll say is action cams. I think this is where action cams come in. They're very handy because first of all, durability, the size, they're small. You can leave them in spaces. You don't have to really worry about them as much. Um, there's also like, you got DJI cameras, you got GoPro, you have 360 cameras to get those unique angles too. Actually, it's funny, a lot of videographers are using them on their camera rig to show that they're at the event, to show that they're behind the scenes and stuff in that. So you just have to be creative and figure out how you're going to use these little cameras because the quality is there. So, yes, there are issues sometimes with overheating and that depending on where you are. But I guarantee you, if you get a little action camera, you're going to get some cool angles and you're going to be able to put that in a lot of tight spaces. Now, the only thing is you're going to have to get some different mounts, some clamps, stuff like that, that go with the action cams. But usually they're pretty good. You can buy like a bundle on Amazon. I bought them before with different clamps. I have a magnetic one. I have a suction cup one for my GoPro, and they really allow me to get all kinds of unique angles. So I think, like you said, a stabilizer, a gimbal, and then action cams. You can also even add in a drone if you want, to get that bird's
Surprise,
eye
surprise.
perspective. What?
Man's
What?
talking about drones.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. No, but for stadium shots to show where you
Mhm.
location shots, every now and then you get to fly it in the building, say, before action starts for pregame. You could definitely do some creative stuff like that. Like I've flown my drone plenty of times inside arenas, getting like logos, getting banners up close. It's always a bit scary because your GPS doesn't work inside, but mine has some sensors, so it's okay. But it's definitely something that opens up different camera angles for you. Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about everything that we can do, everything that looks great, everything that helps, everything that's good, basically.
Yeah.
So is there anything negative about, like, is there like angles, camera angles that you tried that just didn't work, or that you just wouldn't recommend for whatever reason?
I've done tons of camera angles that didn't work, but guess what? No one saw those. No one sees all the times that my angles don't work because there are
Mm.
times and moments where we get to a venue, you get there super early, nobody's there, you set up this camera in a perfect spot, and what happens? You didn't realize that so and so sets up here and they block your shot. So the first time you go to a venue or the first time you're set trying these angles, you will run into problems. But the second time you try or third time, you will learn and you will see what works and what doesn't. So there is a bit of a trial and error. I've had cameras overheat or I'm missing the file goes corrupt. It's not the end of the world. I'm using like angles as a trial at first. Once I nail it down, then I know I'm going to get it. I'm much more confident. So you have to give yourself that little leeway that these things might not work because we do run into issues all the time. So my main issues are like overheating or someone blocking my creative angle. Honestly, I failed plenty of times because of that. One time a camera broke. It was more my fault than theirs, but it was a GoPro, so it was okay. But it was definitely more my fault. I put it in a place that I could have got hit, and it did. Um, Tripods getting knocked over with cameras on too. People don't really realize that your stuff's there. So that comes with the territory, right? When you're trying to be a little creative and trying to step outside the box, you will run into those hiccups. What about you?
Yeah, well, same. I had I used to, at soccer, put a camera behind the goal, and one time the ball, not during the game, I think it was pre-game, they were warming up, taking shots, and the one ball sort of bounced and hit the camera, and the whole crowd behind it, it's all like the active support, so they're all like, hey, everybody's crazy, and it becomes a thing. But the camera was all right, so it wasn't too bad. But I had, like, yeah, I've left cameras on the side stuff, and then someone, like a basketball, hits it or something like that, and it's just, I've never broken one. I've broken like a lens hood, things like that, but nothing much worse than that. But yeah, comes, like you said, comes with the territory. It's probably not something I would say if the camera actually broke. But yeah, other than that, I'd say, like you said, plenty of angles I've looked terrible. Plenty of angles I've prepared for a while and thinking, all right, this is going to be perfect. And then you set up the camera, you set up like a tripod or whatever, like something that takes you time to arrange, and you lock it in, and it's all good to go. And as soon as it starts, a referee or something gets in the shot, or someone just comes in and tells you, like, you can't be there, or like something happens and just messes up your whole 20 minute of set it up is just ruined in 5 seconds. And these things just happen, but if you don't try them, it'll never happen, but you'll never get those shots, because sometimes it does work, and when it does, it's worth it. And so yeah, it's just trying different things, and some work, some don't, but the ones that do make it in the video and make it all worth it, really.
And sometimes it's not your fault at all. I had, one time my camera behind the net, and, first period I come and it's on the ground. So I'm like, "Oh, the suction cup didn't stick." And then when I go back to the footage, there was 2 kids that actually just turned my camera around and filmed themselves dancing and doing a whole bunch of stuff, and then it fell. So I only found out that week, right? Because I didn't watch the footage right away. So the next week when I put the camera there, told the boys, "Oh, you guys are pretty good dancers. I saw your footage," and their faces dropped because they knew they got busted. But little things like that happen. It's funny, nobody was hurt. The camera was fine. It was just on the ground after the first period. I just thought there was a big hit, and maybe it fell off that way because it does happen.
Uh,
But it turned out that it's because these 2 kids were playing with the camera. So you will come up to stuff like that. It's helps you grow. It helps you learn. I've learned more from shots I messed up than shots I nailed the
yeah,
first time.
definitely. Yeah, because then you know how to actually get that shot in the right way because you know what not to do.
That's it. That's it. So,
uh,
your next shoot,
yes.
what kind of creative shot are you going to try to do to push yourself? Or when you go to your next shoot, is it something you think about right away? Like, okay, what can I do to kind of push myself outside of the norms?
Yeah, definitely. Because I try to get like I'll divide it a bit. I think you mentioned that earlier. Like I'll let's say first quarter, first period. Like I'll film like with a few things in mind, then I'll move to the next one, things like that. So like I know that like for basketball, for example, like I'll probably I'll be like on the baseline for the first quarter, then I'll probably move around for the other two. Definitely the last quarter, I want to be close and get those, important shots. Um, but so yeah, I do have like a bit of a plan, not necessarily like written down and that I stick to, like but I do have a bit of a plan. I don't want to get too complacent and just follow the action and not really think about these things and then realize that the game's almost over and I've got like the same shot the entire time. But yeah, I don't know what my next shoot is. So yeah, it's hard to answer that question. I do have like a promo that's coming up that I have to film with like a soccer camp. So I'll definitely have to try to make not trying to make it look interesting, but I think like, make sure I get emotion and joy and smiles and things like that really obvious because it's going to be like little quick videos and they have to be like engaging and fun. So definitely a lot of close-ups and low angles as well because it's probably going to be kids, so you definitely don't want to be like higher than them. um so yeah, so that's the main thing I've got on my mind right now. But the next hockey game, I'd say it depends which camera I'm using.
That's it. You never know. You know,
What about you?
when I go to events to film that, I go with a shot list. And then I always leave room for some creativity because while you're at these events, things always happen that aren't planned, or you see something that's cool that you didn't know that was going to be there. So always leave some room to be a little bit flexible. What I want to do to kind of get outside the box is I want to come up with creative ways to film myself filming. So I can start stocking up some B-roll shots of myself in the action, that because that's something that I've neglected for so long, where I just focus on what I'm doing and that's it, and I don't look at how I'm going to build off that content or build off those experiences. So that's something that I'm looking into on different ways to show what I'm doing. Now I tried and like I mentioned before in the show a couple shows ago, Four Nations. I put my Pocket 3 on top of my handheld camera, and it kind of gave a cool perspective in that, but I was still facing out, like you didn't see me in that. So maybe eventually go into the 360 market and maybe put something that could show more of the atmosphere. So those are kind of things that I'm looking for to kind of push my creativity and push different camera angles.
It's a good idea. Also, I also have a question for you before we wrap things up. Because you're the action camera expert, as you just
Yeah.
alluded to. Um, how hard is it to like edit sort of action cam footage with your mirrorless camera? Like how hard is it to match the two and make it sort of look seamless? Because I'm assuming that's the main.
So I have a bit of a harder time because I still have older GoPros. I have 11s and they're at 13 now. But now it's actually pretty I have used the 13 and the new DJI Action Cam 2, they have log. So it's a lot easier now to match it. Where what I'd have to do a lot with my 11s is I have to boost the exposure a bit. And then what I do is once I color grade all my Sony footage, I just kind of go through one clip. The only good thing is the GoPro footage all looks the same. So I only have to really edit one clip. And once I get the colors right, I could just copy paste that adjustment layer on top of all the other ones, and it's fine. So that's how I kind of get around with it. But now the fact that you can film and log with it, it's really good. And I've been using my Pocket 3 actually with clients lately, and they have D-Log, and I've been matching it with my Sony camera, and it's really, really not that hard. The white balance is pretty much the same. So maybe a couple times I have a little issues with matching greens because I'm doing products. So like the green and the blue of a product, I want exactly the same. It takes me a little bit longer, but once I get that one clip done, boom, it's very, very simple. So it's maybe spend 5 minutes on one clip and then you're good for the rest of your shoot. So it is getting easier and easier that you can film and log on these, and they're 10-bit now. So no issues. So now you want to buy one, right? Yeah. That's it. Sold. DJI, send him a Osmo.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I guess we pretty much covered all the angle stuff. And listen, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in our links or
Do you have a different angle we didn't cover?
Yeah, look at that. Look at that. No, but maybe there are stuff that you're trying. Like we didn't even talk about. I had it in my notes was that drill. The guy puts a football in a drill and he pretends like a guy's catching it with a camera on it. There are a lot of cool things you can try. Now you can't probably try them in game, but you can definitely try them like in practices, or if you have a player one-on-one, you could try all these cool things.
Media day.
That's it. So there's a lot of stuff out there. So drop us a comment and let us know what different angles you're trying to be creative. All right. That's it for this episode of Game Day Glare.
See ya.
See ya.